She's only with him for the money. Everyone knows that. I froze, fingers tightening around my glass of champagne. The voice, smooth and condescending, floated from the kitchen, just loud enough for me to hear. I didn't need to turn around to recognize it. Vanessa, my sister-in-law, always made sure her words cut deep. It was supposed to be a simple family dinner, just us and a few close friends. But now, with every hushed whisper and sideways glance, I realized that Vanessa had turned it into a tribunal, one where I was already guilty. My face burned as I caught snippets of her voice. She didn't even have a real job before marrying him, she scoffed. It's obvious she's just a gold digger. For a moment I couldn't breathe. Couldn't even process the fact that someone I considered family would spread lies so cruel. I glanced at my husband Eric across the room, his back turned as he chatted with his father, oblivious to the way his sister was tearing me apart behind his back. The worst part wasn't even the lies. It was the way everyone seemed to believe them, how the smiles faded the moment I approached, how conversations died in mid-sentence. I gripped my glass harder, knuckles white, forcing a smile as Vanessa's eyes met mine, sudden, triumphant, challenging. It wasn't always like this. When I first met Eric, Vanessa had been civil, polite even. But that all changed the day Eric proposed. It didn't matter that I'd been working as an editor for 5 years or that I made my own money. Vanessa couldn't stand the idea of another woman stepping into the family, especially one who wasn't from the same social circle. It's just sudden, don't you think? Vanessa had said during our engagement party, her smile sweet and sharp. I mean, we barely know anything about her. What if she's just using you? I had laughed it off back then, too in love to see the warning signs. But now, watching her whisper to Eric's mother, her eyes flicking to me with that smug little smile, I realized I'd made a mistake. The whispers didn't stop after that night. They got worse. Eric's mother, who had always been distant, grew colder. Friends stopped inviting us to dinners, citing vague excuses and busy schedules. Even Eric seemed quiet or tired, the strain of choosing between his wife and his sister weighing on him. But the final straw came 2 weeks later. I was cleaning up the living room when I found a message on Eric's laptop. An email from Vanessa. "I'm just worried about you," it read, dripping with false concern. "You have to admit, it's strange how quickly she moved in, how she doesn't like to talk about her past. Are you sure you can trust her?" My vision blurred, breath hitching in my throat. I scrolled further, fingers trembling, reading email after email of Vanessa's poisonous suggestions about how I was hiding something, how I was just waiting to cash out and leave. And Eric hadn't argued once. That was when the hurt gave way to something darker, something cold and unrelenting. If Vanessa wanted to play games, I'd show her just how dangerous that could be. That night I didn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, Vanessa's words echoing in my mind like a festering wound. Gold digger. The accusation burned, not just because it was false, but because Vanessa knew exactly how to twist the knife. She'd taken every insecurity I'd ever tried to bury. My modest upbringing, my scholarship to college, the way I saved every penny growing up, and turned them into weapons. By morning, the hurt had hardened into resolve. If Vanessa wanted a war, I wasn't about to surrender. It started with a hunch, a whisper of intuition that something was off about Vanessa's perfect life. She spent money like water, flaunted designer bags and luxury trips on Instagram, all while claiming to be a financial consultant for a company that, as far as I could tell, didn't actually exist. I spent days digging, calling in favors from old college friends, scouring social media for any slip-up. And then, like a crack in glass, I found it. A quick search of Vanessa's name in public records revealed a bankruptcy filing from 3 years ago, one kept conveniently quiet. But that wasn't the worst of it. Buried in the court documents were records of multiple maxed-out credit cards, a 6-figure debt to a private lender, and a foreclosure notice on a beach house she had posted about on Instagram just months before. But the real dagger came when I found the payments. Thousands of dollars wired every month from Eric's parents' account to Vanessa's. Money she had claimed was from investment returns. So that's why she hated me. Because every dollar Eric spent on our life was one less dollar funneled into keeping her facade alive. But the deeper I dug, the darker it got. I was scrolling through Vanessa's tagged photos, half expecting more smug captions about her success, when I noticed a pattern. A man. Dark hair, always in the background, his arm around her waist in a way that seemed too intimate for a business partner. I found his profile in minutes. Married. 2 kids. A bio that boasted about family values. My fingers trembled as I saved the screenshots, bio rising in my throat. I wasn't just dealing with a liar. I was dealing with a hypocrite who had built her life on stolen money and secret affairs while painting me as the villain. When Eric came home that night, I was waiting. The laptop was open on the kitchen island, screenshots and bank statements spread out like a battlefield. He stopped short, eyes darting from the screen to me, confusion darting into something closer to dread. What is all this? He stammered. Proof, I replied, voice cold. Proof that your sister is a liar, that she's been using your parents' money to pay off her debt while spreading lies about me. His face went pale. Vanessa wouldn't... She would, I snapped. She did. And if you don't believe me, maybe you should call that business partner of hers and ask why he's sending her money every month. For a moment, Eric just stared, mouth opening and closing like he couldn't decide whether to deny it or beg me to stop. But the evidence spoke louder than his words ever could. He sank into a chair, head in his hands, the weight of everything crashing down around him. I didn't know, he whispered, voice hoarse. I swear I didn't know. The raw regret in his eyes might have softened me once, but not anymore. I knew confronting Vanessa alone wouldn't be enough. She was too smooth, too used to spinning lies into truths. I needed to expose her for what she was, and I needed to do it in front of everyone, the same way she had humiliated me. So I waited. I smiled through gritted teeth at family dinners, played the part of the oblivious wife, all while building my case. I collected screenshots, bank statements, photos of Vanessa's beach house with a foreclosure notice still taped to the door. I even reached out to the wife of Vanessa's business partner. An innocent message that quickly snowballed into an hour-long phone call full of tears and confessions. The guilt tried to creep in late at night, the whisper that maybe I was going too far, that maybe this would tear the family apart. But then I'd remember the way Vanessa had smiled when she called me a gold digger, and the guilt would freeze into something far colder. She wanted to play dirty? Fine. I could play dirtier. The perfect opportunity came sooner than I expected. A family reunion at Eric's parents' house, with everyone in attendance. Vanessa showed up in a white dress, smile sharp, and eyes glinting with condescension every time they flicked to me. She was still smirking when I cleared my throat, drawing the room's attention. I think there's something we need to talk about, I said, voice steady. Vanessa's eyes narrowed, a flicker of uncertainty breaking through the mask. About why certain people think they can call me a gold digger while hiding secrets far worse. And then, one by one, I laid it out. The bankruptcy papers, the money transfers, the affair. With every new piece of evidence, Vanessa's face blanched a shade paler, eyes wide and frantic as she stuttered denials that fell flat against the silence. Eric's mother went rigid, face twisted in disbelief, while his father turned a sickly shade of green. But the final blow came when I handed over my phone, playing the recording of Vanessa's lover, admitting to the affair in a shaky voice. The room exploded. Eric's mother in tears, his father demanding explanations, Vanessa screaming about how I was just jealous. But her eyes, wild and desperate, told the real story. The queen had been knocked off her throne. I didn't stay to watch the fallout. As Vanessa's shrill denials turned to sobs, I slipped out the front door, the cool night air biting at my skin. But for the first time in months, I could breathe without the weight of her lies pressing down. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even flinch. But the rage was there, dark and vicious, clawing beneath my skin with every breath. I stared at Eric, the man I'd spent 3 years loving and trusting, and felt something inside me snap. "Get out!" I said, voice low but shaking with fury. He blinked, momentarily stunned. "What?" "I said get out," I repeated, each word icy and precise. "Go to your mother's, go anywhere, but get out of my house." For a moment he hesitated, like he was about to argue, but the way my hands clenched the edges of the kitchen counter, knuckles white, must have convinced him otherwise. He scoffed, grabbed his car keys, and slammed the door behind him. As the echo faded, I sank to the floor, breath hitching, the weight of betrayal pressing down until my vision blurred. But the tears wouldn't come. They had frozen somewhere deep inside, replaced by something far colder. I didn't waste time. The next morning I called my lawyer, words clipped and sharp as I detailed everything. The bank transfers, the texts, the footage. She listened in silence, her tone growing colder with every word. "This is bad," she finally said. "For him, I mean. You have enough evidence to file for full custody and a restraining order against his mother. Full custody! The words hung in the air, heavy and bittersweet. I spent the next few days on autopilot, changing every password on our shared accounts, rerouting our savings into an account only I could access, setting up additional cameras around the house to capture every move Daniel made. Each keystroke, each phone call was a nail in the coffin for Vanessa's lies, and every new piece of evidence I uncovered was a fresh wound. Late at night, when sleep refused to come, I pored over old messages, looking for any hint, any warning sign I might have missed. Each new discovery was a fresh wave of rage. Texts from Vanessa encouraging Daniel to think about what's best for Emily. Late-night phone calls lasting hours. My hands shook with the effort of keeping calm, nails digging into my palms until they left crescent-shaped marks. But I kept going, fueled by a hatred that burned hotter than the betrayal. When Eric came home that night, I was waiting. The laptop was open on the kitchen island, screenshots and bank statements spread out like a battlefield. He stopped short, eyes darting from the screen to me, confusion darkening into something closer to dread. What is all this? He stammered. Proof, I replied, voice cold. Proof that your sister is a liar. That she's been using your parents' money to pay off her debt while spreading lies about me. His face went pale. Vanessa wouldn't... She would, I snapped. She did. And if you don't believe me, maybe you should call that business partner of hers and ask why he's sending her money every month. The way his face crumpled should have hurt. The way his voice cracked with something like regret should have softened me. But all I could see were those texts, those whispered lies, the way he had looked at me with doubt instead of love. I didn't know, he whispered, voice hoarse. I swear I didn't know. A bitter laugh slipped out before I could stop it. You didn't want to know, I shot back. You wanted to believe her because it was easier than standing up for me. 2 months later, we were back in a courtroom, this time for divorce proceedings. Vanessa wasn't there. Rumor had it she'd left town after her lover's wife slapped her with a lawsuit for emotional distress. Eric, on the other hand, looked like a ghost. Sunken eyes and dark circles, suit wrinkled as if he hadn't slept in days. His lawyer tried to argue for a settlement, tried to paint me as spiteful and vengeful, but the evidence spoke for itself. Bank statements, screenshots, recordings. I didn't want it to end like this, Eric murmured during a recess, eyes bloodshot. Neither did I replied, voice flat. But you made your choice. The judge didn't take long to decide, splitting the assets evenly, awarding me a generous settlement for emotional damages. But the real victory was watching Eric's face crumple when the ruling was read, the realization that he was truly alone sinking in. The divorce was finalized 3 weeks later. I moved out of our house, my house now, packing my things into a rented truck with the help of a few friends who hadn't believed Vanessa's lies. As I locked the door for the last time, the weight on my chest finally eased, replaced by something lighter, freedom. I started a new job at a publishing firm downtown, threw myself into work and late-night drinks with coworkers who didn't know my past, who didn't look at me like a gold digger or a victim. But sometimes, late at night, I still scrolled through old photos, of Eric's smile, of holidays at his parents' house, of Vanessa with her perfect hair and venomous smile. Some nights, I almost missed it. The security, the familiarity. Almost. But then I'd remember the lies, the whispers, the way Eric had looked at me with doubt instead of love, and the ache would harden into something stronger. 6 months after the divorce, I ran into Eric at a coffee shop. Hair unkempt, suit wrinkled, eyes dull with exhaustion. He looked smaller than I remembered, shoulders slumped, as if the weight of Vanessa's lies hadn't fully lifted. We stood there for a moment, the silence thick and suffocating. Finally, he cleared his throat, voice cracked and raw. I'm sorry, he murmured, for everything. I stared at him, the man I had once loved with every fiber of my being, and felt nothing. Not anger, not sadness, just a numb sort of acceptance. I know, I replied softly, but it's too late. His face crumpled, eyes glistening with unshed tears. For a moment I almost softened. Almost. But then I turned, coffee cup warm in my hands, and left without looking back. Betrayal isn't just about breaking trust. It's about shattering the illusion that you were ever truly loved. It wasn't just Vanessa's lies that hurt. It was the realization that Eric's silence, his hesitation to defend me, spoke louder than any accusation. It's one thing to be betrayed by an enemy. It's another to be betrayed by the person who once swore to protect you. The worst kind of betrayal doesn't come from the knife in your back, but from the arms that once held you close. There's a certain cruelty in discovering that your love was a lie, that every whispered promise, every late-night confession, was just a mask hiding the rot beneath. It wasn't just Vanessa who played a part. It was Eric who let her words poison our marriage, who chose to believe her lies over my truth. Betrayal turns love into a weapon and trust into a noose. But sometimes the only way to escape is to cut the rope yourself. Letting go isn't about weakness. It's about refusing to be a victim. Walking away wasn't about giving up. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, my voice. It was about proving that I could survive the fire they set beneath my feet and rise from the ashes stronger, unbroken. The true victory wasn't exposing Vanessa's secrets or watching Eric's regret. It was realizing that I didn't need them to find my worth. Forgiveness is a double-edged sword. They say forgiveness is for the strong, that it frees the one who forgives. But forgiving Eric didn't mean forgetting the way he looked at me with doubt, the way he hesitated to choose me over his sister's lies. It didn't mean erasing the pain of realizing that the man I loved was a coward. Forgiveness wasn't about letting him back in. It was about setting myself free from the bitterness that threatened to consume me. Because holding on to hatred is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. It eats you alive, turns your heart into stone. I couldn't change what they did, but I could choose how to move forward. Without them, without the lies, without the weight of a love that was never real. Sometimes the greatest act of love isn't holding on, but knowing when to let go. Letting go of the life I thought I wanted. Letting go of the fantasy that somehow they'd apologize and everything would be okay. Letting go of the questions that kept me up at night. The what-ifs, the could-have-beens. Because freedom isn't about erasing the past. It's about refusing to let it define your future. Betrayal may have broken my heart, but it also set me free. Free to rebuild, to find love that didn't come with conditions or whispered lies. Free to choose myself first without apology. In the end, betrayal isn't the end of the story. It's just the turning point. The moment you stop surviving and start living. So tell me, if you were in my place, would you forgive? Or would you make them regret it too?